Picture this. It's a Saturday afternoon in 1976. You're 9 years old, cross-legged on the carpet, 3 inches from the telly. The smell of your mom's meat pie drifts in from the kitchen. Outside, it's gray and drizzling. But none of that matters, because on that screen, gleaming, growling, and possibly cool, is a car. Not just any car. The car. The one you'd draw in your school notebook on Monday morning. The one you'd argue about with your mates at the bus stop. The one that felt more real to you than anything parked on your own street. Those cars weren't just props. They were characters, and most of them are gone. British television gave the world some of the most iconic vehicles ever put on screen. From the late 1960s all the way through to the 1990s, these machines became as famous as the actors who drove them. Children memorized their number plates. Grown men built scale models of them. Women wrote letters to production companies asking where they were kept. But here's the heartbreaking truth. Many of them were scrapped, auctioned off for nothing, left to rot in fields, crushed without ceremony the moment the cameras stopped rolling. Some were lost through sheer carelessness. Others vanished into private collections, never to be seen again. This is the story of 17 of those cars, the ones that captured a nation's heart, and the devastating fate that found so many of them. You know the one, mustard yellow, dented, plastered with the words, Trotters Independent Trading Co. It rattled through the streets of Peckham like it was held together by hope and Del Boy's optimism. When it first appeared in 1981, nobody thought much of it. By the mid-1980s, it was the most recognized van in Britain. There were actually several used during filming. Most were written off on purpose, driven into things, rolled, destroyed for laughs. One survived. Just one. And for years, its whereabouts were completely unknown. Fans searched. Collectors offered money. Nothing. It was eventually tracked down in 2001, rusting quietly in a lock-up garage in Bristol. Barely held together. But alive, gone, then found. Just barely. It's 1975. Detective Inspector Regan slams the door of his bronze Cortina and floors it through the back streets of West London. The tires scream. The engine roars. 22 million people lean forward in their seats. The Sweeney made the Cortina a legend overnight. Ford couldn't have paid for better advertising. Sales of the Mark III increased noticeably in 1975 and 1976. Partly, many believe, because every young man in Britain suddenly wanted to feel like Jack Regan, the actual cars used on set. Most were standard police pool vehicles returned after filming. Crushed. Recycled. A few were sold at auction for almost nothing in the late 1970s. Their whereabouts today? Unknown gone. It only appeared briefly. A battered, exhausted Morris Minor, 1,000 driven with spectacular incompetence. But that single scene, Basil thrashing it with a branch after it broke down, became one of the most beloved moments in British comedy history. Broadcast in 1975, watched by nearly 16 million people, the car was a rental. Returned the next day. Nobody thought to keep it. Nothing. Technically a film car rather than a TV car. But in 1977, it was shown so frequently on British television, on chat shows, news programs, holiday specials, that an entire generation grew up believing it lived on the small screen. White, sleek, capable, famously, of becoming a submarine. 4 Esprits were used in production. One was auctioned in 1989, bought for a modest sum, disappeared into a storage unit in New York. Rediscovered in 2013, by which time it had become one of the most valuable Bond cars ever found. It sold at auction for over $500,000, lost for 24 years, right under everyone's noses. Music builds again, confident, driving Bodie and Doyle. Black leather jackets, and a gold Ford Capri that became the definitive symbol of late 1970s British cool. The professionals began in 1977. Within months, the Capri had waiting lists at Ford dealerships across the country. Several Capris were used during the show's run. Stunt cars were damaged beyond repair. Hero cars, the ones filmed in close-up, were sold off cheap when production wrapped in 1983. One ended up in a scrapyard in Essex. A fan reportedly bought it for 30 quid, restored it, kept it for decades before quietly selling it on. 30 quid. For a piece of British television history, Jersey, Sunshine. And Jim Bergerac sliding into a 1947 Triumph Roadster with the ease of a man who knew exactly how handsome he looked doing it. The show began in 1981. The car, Cream, open-topped, impossibly romantic, became as much a part of Jersey's identity as the coastline itself. 3 roadsters were sourced for the production. Finding them had been genuinely difficult. By 1981, surviving Triumph Roadsters were already rare. One was damaged in filming. One was sold after the show ended in 1991. One simply disappeared from the records, a car that was already rare. Made rarer, still gone, Z-Cars began in 1962. It was raw, real, revolutionary, a police drama that showed working-class Britain as it actually was. The Vauxhall Velox patrol cars became symbols of a new kind of television, watched by 14 million people at its peak. The show ended its long run in 1978. The cars were simply returned to fleet, absorbed back into traffic, crushed when their mileage ran out. Nobody saved a single one, a generation's worth of Saturday night memories. Pressed into scrap metal, before Z-Cars there was Dixon. And before Dixon was cool, there was a Ford Ziffer rolling slowly through wet London streets, while Jack Warner tipped his helmet to passers-by. The show ran from 1955 to 1976. 21 years of the same quiet, reassuring presence. The cars used across those decades? Replaced constantly, disposed of without thought. Not one survives in any verified collection, a lesser-known one. But for those who remember the 1977 ITV drama Raffles, the gentleman thief who drove through Edwardian England in gloriously impossible style, the vehicles used were themselves remarkable pieces of motoring history. Several were damaged during filming. The rest were auctioned. Most cannot be traced. Agon, film first, television forever. Broadcast repeatedly throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the Italian Job and its fleet of red, white, and blue menace became the defining image of British pluck. The film used approximately 16 menace, many of which were deliberately destroyed for the famous chase sequences. 3 survived the original production. One is in a private collection in the Midlands. One is in a museum in Turin. One was last seen at a Birmingham auction in 1994. After that, nothing. Asterisk numbers 11 through 14 come in rapid succession because their stories are almost identical. Each car beloved, each car lost. The Jaguar XJS driven by William Dempsey and Makepeace. The Austin Allegro used for comedy effect in countless 1970s sitcoms. A car so derided at the time that nobody thought to preserve one in its original TV form. The Range Rover from the bill, so anonymous in its purpose it was never even listed in production records. And the Bedford Doormobile from Doctor Who, used in a 1967 episode scrapped before the decade was out. Each one. Ordinary at the time, extraordinary in hindsight. Because there's a second car from the professionals that deserves its own moment. In 1978, a retired school teacher named Margaret Hollis from Wolverhampton spotted a silver Rover SD1 at a local car boot sale. Something about it looked familiar. The seller wanted £85 for it. She bought it on instinct, drove it home, parked it in her garage. It wasn't until 1994, 16 years later, that her son, flicking through a television encyclopedia, noticed the number plate, CI 7994. The registration matched production stills from the professionals. Margaret had unknowingly saved a piece of history. She refused every offer made for it until her death in 2009, when it passed to her son. It remains in the family today, one woman, one instinct. One car saved, Roger Moore, white Volvo. And a television series that convinced half of Britain that sophistication was possible on a budget. The Saint ran from 1962 to 1969. The P1800, registered ST1, became one of the most recognizable cars in British television history. Volvo, sensibly, kept track of it. The original hero car is preserved and occasionally displayed. But the stunt cars? The duplicates used for filming? Scattered. Some exported, most unaccounted for. The Icon survived. Its siblings did not strictly a period TV car, but it appeared on British screens so many times, in trailers, on television broadcasts, in behind-the-scenes programs, that by 2003 it had become a television car by osmosis. The flying turquoise Ford Anglia 105E used in Chamber of Secrets was one of 14 sourced for production. One was lost in a Costa Rican jungle during overseas filming. It sat there for years, discovered by locals, rusting beneath the canopy. Found in 2005. Barely salvageable. Now restored and displayed at the Warner Brothers Studio Tour in Leavesden found. Against all odds, Staventine cars. Some found, some restored. Most gone forever. We had the programs. We had the memories. We had the number plates memorized before we could read proper books. But the cars themselves, the actual metal and glass and leather that sat in front of those cameras, most of it is dust now. We had less back then. Fewer channels, smaller screens, no way to pause or rewind. But somehow it felt like more. Every Saturday night in front of that telly felt like a national event. Like the whole country was watching together. Because it was. If you grew up watching any of these cars race across your screen, you know exactly what I mean. If this brought back memories, share it with someone who remembers those Saturday nights in front of the telly. Please subscribe to keep these stories alive. Every view helps us preserve a little more of the Britain we grew up in. And drop a comment below. Which TV car do you remember most? The yellow van, the gold Capri, the white Volvo? Tell us. We'd love to know.